This conference will now be recorded.
I don't think I have any other announcements for Greening USA. I'm still working on the program for October. I'm a little bit behind because of the work on my house during the nice weather. So if anybody has a burning topic that you believe that we should be discussing here, by all means, let me know and or volunteer to present to the group. We'd love to open the group up to new presenters. So let us know. We usually do go around the table, and since we have a smallish group right now, well, I think we have time to just go around and just say your name and maybe who you're associated with. Or something else short of a speech, so we can get to our panel as soon as possible. So I probably should introduce myself. I hear some, and probably people should keep muted before until you're going to speak, because they can create some feedback loops, I suppose, unless you're using a mic, and then it might help. So my name is John Prespiora. I'm on the board of directors and a founding member of Greening USA, and I try to do my best to keep our green bag lunch program moving from month to month. And next, I see, I'll skip Diane. I'll go off my screen. I'll skip Diane, come back to her at the end before we get our panelists. I see Glenn.
Yes. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So this is Glenn Allen. By trade, I'm a freelance software developer, but I'm also a very green person. I'm a huge cyclist. I have an affiliation with the New York Bicycling Coalition, which touts safety for cyclists and pedestrians. And I'm also on the Transportation Committee for ADAPT CNY. And thrilled to learn more about these parklets I'm seeing. Thank you.
Hey, great. Thanks for being here with us today. I'll skip Michael, and then I see Greg Lewis. And don't forget that you're going to speak, unmute yourself. I say Greg might be away from his microphone unless he's looking for the button to unmute, which is sometimes hard to find. We'll skip Greg then and go to Howie.
Hi, this is Howie Hollander. I'm a retired engineering manager from Lockheed Martin, but involved in a lot of STEM outreach activities through the Technology Alliance of Central New York, where I'm president emeritus, and I'm board chair at the Museum of Science, and a whole bunch of other stuff just to fill my day.
Thanks, Howie's a frequent flyer at Green Bag Lunch. Thanks for being with us. I'll skip Matthew, and I mentioned a little bit about Dave Ashley, but Dave is here, although I don't see his mug. Oh, I guess his camera's pointing over his head a little bit. There you go. Hi, Dave.
Good job.
I'm a founding member of Greening USA, and I'm also an emeritus partner of Ashley McGraw Architects. So I really enjoy these green bag lunches, and I thank you, John, for facilitating them so well.
Well, thank you, Dave, for your kind words and for being here today. Next, I see former panelist Baxter.
Hi, I'm Baxter Hankin. I was part of the presentation with Greening USA last month. I'm a member and recent graduate of Syracuse University School of Architecture. And I'm really looking forward to this presentation because I included some parklets in my recent thesis project. So very interested to see what sort of ideas come up here.
Great, thank you. And I see board member Jeff Anthony.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Gotcha. Make sure I hit move. Yes, my name is Jeff Anthony. I'm a membership director here at Greening USA. I work in residential energy auditing, going into homes and making them more energy efficient. Being on the board for, oh gosh, probably a year now. It's also my little spiel here to say if you're not already a member, we encourage you to become one. Most of the people, or a lot of the people on here I can see are members or founders, so obviously preaching to the choir. Greening USA does a lot of good things, and you can make the argument that it's more important than ever because we can't always get together. So if you're not a member, we would encourage you to become one. We're always looking for more people, new ideas, board members, committee members, and all that. So without more, I will stop my little plug and send it on to the next. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ronnie?
Yes, Ronnie Hardaway. I am Deputy Mayor for the Village of Lansing and also the Chair of the Village's Greenway Committee. I'm curious if we can somehow incorporate parklets within our upcoming Greenway revision. So that's it.
Cool. Thanks for being with us today. Bob Haley?
Yep, thank you. I'm also very near the founding member group of this great organization that Dave, Ashley, and Diane have championed for years, and certainly John. I did want to do a shameless promotion of another group, Focus Greater Syracuse, that is also doing webinars. And this Friday morning at 8 o'clock, that'll be our fourth live webinar. This one is on the community dialogue in the time of COVID. And we have 4 different individuals speaking on how COVID is affecting all aspects of our community dialogue, peacemaking team, the Courts for Innovation, 8 o'clock on Friday morning. Check into the Focus Greater Syracuse website to register. And thank you for your efforts on this group here.
Thanks, Bob, for the information and for being here. Peter King.
Good afternoon. I'm been a member with Urban Jobs Task Force and Moving People Transportation Coalition. I'm really interested in tactical urbanism as applies to the many issues that we're seeing play out in Syracuse. And I think this is all very relevant information as we go into whatever happens with the IAD1.
Great, thank you. Good to see you again. Peter is also a frequent flyer with Greening USA and Green Bag Lunch. And then Larry? Larry, if you would unmute your mic, you can have a minute or so to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm a member of the Greenway Committee that Ronnie Hardaway just mentioned in the Village of Lansing, and I'm here just along with Ronnie to find ideas for the upcoming revisions.
Good, great. Thanks for being with us today. And I don't know if is Greg Lewis back on? I think we skipped Greg.
Yeah,
okay.
Greg is here.
Yeah, Greg sent a note and said he's working. So, hi, Greg.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
I'm just gonna kind of listen in the background while I'm working.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to just introduce yourself quickly.
I'm not with any particular organization. I attend a lot of your events, and I just keeping up on what's happening.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Good to see you, or good to hear you, I should say.
Yeah.
All right, so without further ado, our panelists are up next for us. We have Michael Heagerty and Matt Lupiani will present on the Parklet projects, as you know. Mike sent me some information about himself, and in which he is referred to as the de facto ambassador of Syracuse. He's a Common Space alumni and a true urban instigator, and we need more instigators, right? He is founder of the Wildflowers Armory, and hopefully he'll tell us a little bit about wildflowers as well in his presentation. He calls it a haven for all things local. The Big Yellow Fellow and the brainchild behind the great many unique installations and special events. Overpass Fest, Roller buffet and Syracuse Bread Council. I need to hear about all those things. I really must say, most of that is new to me. He's also been referred to as the Prince of Pop-ups. And joining Michael today will be Matt Lupiani, who is a project manager and is an architect and project manager for SWBR, the Rochester based, but now Syracuse office firm. Matt has been managing the Syracuse office since 2015. He has resided in New Orleans and Tampa, and now we're pleased to have him here with us in Syracuse. So I'm not going to say much more. We would, as I said earlier, we would appreciate if you want to fill us in a little bit about your backgrounds and about your passion for this stuff, as well as about the specifics about the projects. We'd love to hear it and get to know both of you better. So welcome. Thanks for doing this. And I'm not sure which one is going first. So I'll just, I think Matt was given the presenter, right? So are you going to go first, Matt?
Yeah, I'll tell you just a little bit about myself if you hear me okay. If not, wave your hands crazy so I can see it. But if you're not waving hands, I'll assume you can hear me. And so, yeah, I'll just give you a little bit about my background that's not written in the bio that John passed around. And thank you, John and Diane, for setting this up, helping facilitate and getting us out here to talk with all of you today. It's very exciting what we're doing, and we're really excited about what's to come. We'll give you a glimpse about that today. But I'll just give you a little bit of insight on what inspires me and what I've done sort of in my academic background, and bringing this to Syracuse. And then we'll turn it over to Michael to talk about what really gets him out of bed. Although I don't think he sleeps, eats, or has to use the bathroom, with how he's everywhere at all times and all knowing of everything, right? So I think he's somewhat of a robot. He's a hero to me on what he's able to do here in Syracuse. I'm not a Syracuse native. I'm from Rochester, just like my firm that I work for. But we have been in Syracuse since the early 2000s. And I came here from Tampa, which I spent 3.5 years to start my professional career there, living not more than 1 mile from my office there, but having to cross like 2 major intersections and 8-lane highways just to get there. So that's kind of what Tampa's all about. And I know they're improving their pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods down there over the last few years. But before getting to Tampa, I was in New Orleans, and I was really my first experience of New Orleans was shock, because I transferred there from SUNY Alfred State in an architectural program here, a 2-year program. I transferred into the master's program at Tulane in New Orleans, and I arrived there literally a day before Hurricane Katrina hit that city. And without bringing up too much of that past right now, I'll just say that I was just in awe of the city, first major city that I was going to live in outside of Rochester and my wife. And I was at the Superdome for a preseason football game, Baltimore Ravens and Saints, literally a day before that Superdome became, a haven for the city to survive. And it was all over CNN for months. So getting back there, so it was wild. It was no clouds in the sky, and I was like, I don't even know what a hurricane is. I'm from up north. I don't know what's coming at all. But I got sort of the last plane out there. Luckily, was one who got out, and a lot of people couldn't. You guys know the story. Many of you probably know the story about why and how there was so much damage down there. But coming back, one amazing story about Tulane was that the rest of the university there had about a 60 to 75% return rate, whether it was their parents of students didn't feel safe with their students going back to the city after the storm, or they just had got connected with their displacement university that took them in over the semester that Tulane was closed, and they just felt comfortable to stay there. Whatever the case was, it was a 60 to 75% return rate, but the School of Architecture had about a 98% return rate. So all of the architecture students in the architecture program knew what was on their shoulders and on our shoulders to come back to, and to try to regenerate, and look out for the people and the well-being in Syracuse. And so I loved my time in New Orleans. That's where I met my now wife, who's from Syracuse. And And it was a great time because we got to go through their urban build studio, which looked at the macro and the micro for building homes, affordable homes for residents in the 9th Ward and other poverty-stricken areas in New Orleans, but also the macro, looking at grand schemes about using phrases like moratorium, building moratorium in the below sea level areas, and looking at how to sort of establish a macro scheme that built out over on almost like pilotis, like a Lake Orbu designs all over the city to stay above flood level, and looking at Amsterdam and how they have floating facilities. I mean, it was a really fun experience. I donated time to actually build some of the houses that were designed by students there, and then I went to Tampa and worked, and luckily had the opportunity to come to Syracuse. And I'm here now and connected with Michael Heagerty after moving up here in 2011. And I'll throw it over to Mike here to talk a little bit about your background, Mike, and then we'll jump right into the meat of this.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. It's also noteworthy that back during that same time frame, kind of oddly, Matt and I didn't necessarily cross paths, but we were in a similar place because I volunteered with Lemoyne College, and a professor friend of mine asked me to oversee a trip down to New Orleans. We stayed in the lower 9th Ward and for 1 week had what they called an alternative spring break. So being a Jesuit school, they actually had students opt to take this week-long vacation, and we took 3 buses, Greyhound buses, transferred for like a full 27-hour bus ride from upstate New York all the way down to New Orleans, stayed at a block away from Bo Diddley's home, a famous landscape that was painted black and gold, and basically for 1 week oversaw doing work in the area, kind of like a pardon the terminology, but a half-ass Habitat for Humanity crew. And I had probably the most life-changing experience of my life down there, because working with those who weren't displaced, who stayed through the hurricane, and being able to have probably the best week of meals of my entire life, also noteworthy. But basically I worked as a median between the older professors and the younger students, and I was kind of caught in the middle. But it was a very long and arduous week, and I worked and pushed everyone to do as much as possible, and made lifelong friends. And when Matt mentioned that he was there during that time frame, it like rocked my world a little bit, and maybe in some weird way we were always meant to be connected. So that was just kind of one of the ways in which Lupiani and I got together and began this project. So it's noteworthy that we both have a lot of real world experience in other cities, from being lucky enough to visit or friends and see innovations over the years as well. So it was easy for us to see what can and cannot be done. I forgot how funny my bio was that I sent to you, John, and mentioned a handful of the many things that I do. It's noteworthy that I like the variety, so I have a lot of side projects. Probably the funniest one on that list was Roller Buffet. And last year, I like to work with the creative class of the city. Most of my friends are creatives, and so they're musicians and artists and architects and such, right? So my number one actual skill is connecting these kinds of folks and being some sort of glue amongst those kind of different circles, right? And so I envisioned a 1970s disco roller night, and then I did the 2 things that any insurance agent would go say no thank you to, and I put a bar in that room, and I added, I basically rented skates to anyone. So I found a guy in Geneva, New York named Brucey, who literally took an entire skate place, put it on up racks and rolled up in a trailer and had skates available to anybody in any size. And we rented them out and said, sign here so you don't break your neck. And we rented a facility that used to be the Franciscan church at North Salina at Catawba. And it was all part of an old church campus for a school. So they had like an amazing second floor, non-ADA friendly second floor, huge open gymnasium with a arch ceiling. On one side of the gymnasium was a stage, and on the other were built-in bleachers. And in the middle was a parquet floor, full basketball court that wasn't being utilized. So I rented it, brought in a live disco band, put a bar in the corner, put food on one corner, and then put a few cones down and sat back and watched while a couple thousand people came to walk in that evening at the door. And the one stipulation was you had to come dressed 70s out, and afros and long hippie dresses and all kinds of things came walking through the door. And it was a pretty magical, wild evening. And I called it Roller Buffet. And ever since then, I've been borderline harassed by every person who attended that evening to do it again. But obviously we've got some things to work through to get to a place where we can all be in, bumping elbows again. But it was wild, and I don't know how I pull some of these things off, because the band was the band, the bar was the bar, I was the sole person working upstairs, and my friend Juliana was the sole person taking in tickets downstairs, and it was a hell of an evening. But anyways, that's Roller Buffet, and that gives you a little insight into how I do not let anything, including the city of Syracuse or any sort of rules or regulations, stop me from making fun things happen in the city. And that's where Matt comes into play most often than not when working on a collaborative project together. And that is, I'm known to bust through the ceiling and try to be up here, so that if things go down to here, it actually is pretty reasonable and fun for all. The Parklets for the people, and this project is a real passion project for both Matthew and I, and we kind of like quarterback these local businesses through the process. But I think the real key here is how drastically things have changed in the world, and how drastically, finally, after a lot of jabs being thrown, that the new administration of the city actually is working with us, and how much of a strange, charmed position I'm in with the city of Syracuse right now as a community member, or as the urban instigator, as I so referred to, as that allows me to almost consult on behalf of the mayor. And the mayor really basically privately said to me, time to let you off the chain, because we don't have overtime, we don't have extra funding, we don't have resources that can be turned towards these innovative ideas, but you're the kind of person who can bring the right people to the table and make it happen. And so I begged and pleaded and worked every day for months with Eric Ennis, who has recently been upgraded into, I believe the term is business development director for the city. And
I thought you were going to say father, Michael. I thought you were going to say father.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, because he's also had a child. Yeah.
And he just had his first child, so he's on break. And Jennifer Tift from the city has actually been, also very heavily involved. But in essence, we've seen streets being shut down in other cities. We've seen parklets before, and we kind of have this nice history from back in the day in San Francisco a decade ago when parklets were created till now. But what we've learned and done is we've translated them into usable street eatery structures that really benefit the restaurants and the small businesses. So I could go on and on, but it's let's get back to it.
Yeah, I'll pick up and I'll help us stay structured on this because this is such a positive thing for the local businesses. It definitely gets our juices flowing here to know that there's a direct benefit to the local businesses for what we're doing. And as you said, Michael, the city, city's not not paying you, they're not paying us. This is something that the Parklets for the People that you authored is helping to crowdfund a lot of this. We're just directly strictly motivated to help the local businesses, and we're gonna, at the end of this presentation, we'll give you a glimpse at some talks we've had beyond food, right, and how this can keep going. And so we're excited to get through this content, help you see a little bit of the background and directly on how we came together on the outdoor parklets and the parking day. If you're not familiar with that, we'll just give you a little preview or window in on what that is and what that's all about, and how we join forces for the Parklets for the People and what we've got out there on the street right now. And then we'll talk about a little bit more on that collaboration with the city and working together to solve a need really to keep us from face planting due to this COVID situation, and going into the winter, the short-term solutions that are out there, ideas generated from Michael's end, and then macro planning and looking more to next warm season and also other types of businesses. So let's jump in here and jump in. It's not a lot of slides here, but I will. We do have some nice eye candy to show here. So covering this here, I'll skip right through this. One of our fundamental principles here is to create place, create memories and healthy interactions, and that's a principle shared by the Rebar group out of San Francisco that Michael referred to, that since the 2000s has been doing these urban interventions to reclaim parts of the city, starting in San Francisco, where they might really need to reestablish some green space a little bit more than Syracuse might, right? We've got these pocket parks, we've got green spaces in Syracuse, and it's not a wide footprint as far as our dense urban business district is per se. Parking is not, although some businesses and people would suggest it, it's not really a problem relative to other major cities, at least in my opinion, and from what I've seen in other cities. So, this is really about being proactive and maintaining and creating these healthy interactions and spaces, not necessarily strictly reclaiming green space like the Rebar Group's original motivations were. And so a little bit of background, jumping into the parking day specifically, and a little bit about Parklets for the People. Here's an example, just a little bit of one of the urban interventions or art installations that Michael's all about. I can remember seeing years ago his installation there through an alleyway downtown in Syracuse with with this the umbrellas tied up on the fish line, and just kind of creating a shaded trellis essentially, right? This is space that didn't exist. This was habitable space. This was enjoyable space that didn't exist before Michael got there, and it kind of goes up in a day, and it's really cool. And one other example, if you didn't see it back in 2018 on the right, is what we put together for the annual parking day, which is third week in September typically. So coincidentally, it landed on my birthday in 2018, the first year we did it. So, my team and my family brought me a cake to eat out here on the street. But, we built this modular, and this might be actually Michael in the background. Look at this.
It is me. Yeah, I was quick to turn to it. So like parking day as envisioned back in those days, Matt nailed it, that they were most interested in like emissions. There were lots of cars, there was lots of movement in San Fran, but there wasn't a lot of as much walkability as one would like, or green spaces. So they literally started taking over parking spots and making these little mock parks. Now, back then, they were like cute little pay for the parking spot, so the city couldn't do anything about it. So they were getting the funds, so that was the way around it. But when landscape architects got a hold of it, it really became an international phenomenon, and it was supposed to be the game-changing answer to like dense urban areas that don't have any greenery, and it trickled outward and did actually help a lot of cities kind of take these in and into consideration. But it was a one day only like picket line, check it out event. And so it took some time to really get minds into understanding what it would look like to reclaim some of that pavement and some of that excess, asphalt that is all over these cities. Because as you well know, in the US, it's vehicle is the number one, most thought about thing when planning any of these cities or planning any of these spaces. And it seemed as though tourism, especially as we all know, like in San Francisco, was just completely obliterating that idea. And it was so much foot traffic and so many more people on foot that it kind of like changed things. So we got to do some pretty interesting things over the years, but we've been doing parking day in some capacity on again, off again every year in Syracuse for about a decade. And it wasn't until Matt and company came in with SWBR that the parking stuff lifted up a little bit. And then even ESF students got involved making their own parklets as well. So it started getting a little more steam behind it. And then you go ahead, Matt, and tell this, but here's the best part about this reusable source thing to try to make it happen and be creative with our materials. And he's bringing up a photo that's noteworthy. Go ahead, Matt.
Sure. So yeah, in our design process, through our design process for leading up to the 2018 parking day, shown on your right, we had some connections with a local contractor who had performed some demolition at West Genesee School District for a project a couple of years prior, and he had a load of this these bleachers, this original cedar wood bleacher material that he had salvaged and had in his warehouse just outside of Syracuse. And so we had actually we got together as a team, as a firm, and we said, this is worthwhile to purchase this and use this as a renewable source. And so we sort of funded it as a firm to get the material and get a little bit of his help because we needed his flatbed to install this. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the installation that went up in a matter of an hour in just a second. But yeah, this wood is from West Genesee High School bleachers that had come out a number of years ago and have been repurposed now for 3 consecutive years into different installations. And so it's a really neat conversation about in terms of sustainability, how we're literally seeing a direct benefit from this renewable source. It's malleable, it's not bendable and foldable as a material, but it's malleable in the sense that we can trim it, we can cut it, we can form it into these different shapes, and it can create space, it can create flat, vertical, and ceiling delineations for new space that doesn't exist, before we get to it, before we create it. And that's really the neat part about this. And so the image on the right was an installation that we did actually we went bonkers and we're like, we need walls, we need a roof, we need plantings all over the place. And this was a really successful space. I also wanted to bring up a quick 15-second time lapse, and I'm not sure that it would show well on the video, so maybe we can bring it up at the end. But what you see is a bunch of people interacting with this space that wouldn't have I'll bring it up right here, that wouldn't have normally stopped and talked with each other. This was our experience. Is this showing for everybody? So this was 2018. It's our first take at this parking day as a firm, SWBR in Syracuse, and our model of this. So what you're seeing is a lot of our shirts and our people, right? We learned the first year, this is not about us. This is about bringing other people in and meeting new people, which we did a lot of. But this needs to really appear like it's your space. This needs to appear like it's the city's space, and not ours. And we're welcoming guests into it with us. So we created more of a, fast forward into 2019. We created a little bit more of an open setting where we had, and it's on the next slide here, where we wanted to repurpose the wood into, and I'm just going to go right back to that slide in a second, Michael, so you can talk a little bit about your
Sure.
the German outfit and the wheelbarrow model. So these are now the 2020 images in the top left and top right. The bottom middle is the 2019 PARKlets, where we actually expanded and stretched this reclaimed wood into 2 whole parking spaces. And so now we've gone away from sort of the 3-sided walls and the roof, and we've gone more to just delineating space, protecting the patrons from the traffic on Franklin Street. This is out front possibilities as well, and it goes as north all the way to Fayette Street, right? And so we created this. We had this idea that we were going to go around the fire hydrant, and we were going to sort of have this movable sign in front of the fire hydrant in the bottom image, and we could stretch this wood, so to speak, going back to it being renewable and malleable, to delineate 2 parking spaces, and 1 + 1 would equal 3, because we would have folks that could kind of mingle and walk through and back and forth across the fire hydrant, where we definitely did not want to build and impede on fire safety, right? So 1 + 1 could equal 3 there, and that was really neat. And I've got a cool time lapse there that I'll hold for now. But then we get to 2020, and we've got to stretch this wood even further. So now we're in this third intervention of reusing this cedar, these wood bleachers. I mean, the value or the return on this has just been incredible for all the years it was bleachers. And we've set it up here in the left and the right image now. The left image is me sitting at Possibilities the day after we built it. And there was a whole team involved, and we can get through the credits, when it's appropriate. But looking across the street at the Kitty Hoynes setup. So now we've got 3 whole parking spaces. So now 1 + 1 actually did equal 3, and we've got spaces on both sides of the street delineated, and some barriers in between. And so it's a simple design. It's set up to be very fast construction and almost like tilt up. But the new thing this year was actually being required to have a platform. And so we've got a slide where we're going to talk about meeting of the minds with the city, or we'll come back to this and we'll really talk about collaboration with the city and helping them through creating their guidelines for parklets and how to be on the street. How do you engage the street? How do you circumvent traffic or protect patrons from traffic? So we'll jump back to that in just a second. But the point is here, we're using this reusable, renewable resource to create these temporary spaces that are sometimes go up in an hour and they're there for a day, or they could be there as long as the entire season. We can touch on that in just a little bit. So very, very exciting. We're very, and one neat thing about this wood is you're seeing the backside of this wood on the image on the left, and there's like little
gum,
love notes scratched into the bottom.
signatures.
Signatures. There's love notes, like Julie and Steve forever, forever on there from whatever year. And so we were talking throughout this whole construction of this, and even up to the culminating in this sort of christening at dinner that Michael was sitting right next to me in this photo. We're going to have a couple come down here, and their night is either going to be boosted and improved by out of this world, or it might be leaving with a little bit less less smiles if it's a girlfriend or boyfriend, or now husband and wife and their parents, and they see that's my love, that's what I scratched in, that's our forever scratch from when we met in high school. We're high school sweethearts.
The bleachers that have 9 lives now, because we've been able to continue to use them because the quality of the wood was there, and so believe it or not, there legitimately was gum underneath some of these. And so when we actually put them together, we used the lower level at the McCarthy as like the staging area. So the project I've been working on, and you can see in the picture on the right, I belong to a group that's basically tactical urbanism around the world. And I kind of became obsessed with the re-envisioning of urban pockets and spaces throughout the city. And because there's so many nice nooks and crannies and different areas that are just completely underutilized. There's like triple wide sidewalks in downtown proper, on Salina and for a few blocks. There's alleyways and all these very interesting spaces, and they've never really been looked at as a whole, as like the glue amongst these downtown streets. And so something that I just became oddly obsessed with was how easily simple programming can obliterate the idea of that being a dark alleyway you don't want to go down. And so those are the kinds of things that like drove me. And I would see these ideas and I try to stop myself from getting down the internet rabbit hole of being like, why aren't we more like Barcelona? You know, like, why can't we do these things in upstate? You know, and like, and then hearing from people. And I think this is the thing that really makes me like drives me wild in, you know, why I don't sleep is because I lose sleep over hearing things like I went to Ithaca right outside of Lansing, right? I went to Ithaca and I saw Ithaca City Center and there's this beautiful walkway that everyone can walk on and it's this amazing thing. And I went to Burlington and it's similar. Well, guess what? It's the same city planner that made them both. But at the end of the day, we see these beautiful examples of like, you know, these interactions. And what really drives me in particular is that those like memory making interactions. When someone comes to that space, they do remember that area and they have these fond like, you know, interactions and connections that happen. And when you socialize these like spaces made of like monoliths and you know above you, like when you take an underpass and turn it into a music festival, and when you take an alleyway and turn it into a craft fair, and change the way that people perceive these things, how quickly it can become these magical spaces, and then how easily it is to translate that idea across the board. So I try not to get too much down that rabbit hole of being too interested in what they're doing in Germany or whatever. And then I saw the picture on the left and I contacted these Germans who, in essence, if you look a little closer at it, they made a custom wheelbarrow design that's got two long poles that clip into it that allow anyone to lift carefully and kind of counteract the weight. They're cut on the front, and what they are is they're just simple plant boxes that allow the tree to be in the center and a bench to be around the entire tree. So they literally, like tactical urbanism, got like an army of people to build these things out. And the firm, landscape architectural firm, got permission from the city in Stuttgart, Germany, and really interestingly went on like a small army of them pull up, and they all just like choreograph, park them, and clip them together, and they've got an actual like usable parklet that has like the trees, and they're completely modular, and they program them in on streetscapes throughout Stuttgart. So I reached out to them via this Tactical Urbanism Facebook page, and faster than I could press return, the person behind it was giving me the architectural drawings. They were in metric, so that was a little tough to figure out, but we figured it out. And translating it all, there were like 3D renderings. There was this interesting thing going on, and they just handed it all over willfully and said like, yeah, totally, this is what we want this to happen everywhere. So I had this beautiful thing, and I quickly turned around, made a GoFundMe, and posted it and said, we can have parklets in the city of Syracuse. And the only reason why I was able to do that GoFundMe and do the crowdfunding was because I had already worked with Eric Ennis in the city to get the parklets to be permittable in the city of Syracuse for more than just temporarily on the day of parking day. And that's what allowed us to really start collaboratively working on this common inspiration and vision like Matt talks about. Moving on.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. And Michael, I think we still need to return our tips for improvement on their plans from the group that you were working with, from the construction plans that they gave us, or lack thereof. So it'd be good to circle back with them and complete the collaboration. They were yeah, they were great about giving you that information. And those are some fun nights, and some fun wheelbarrow racing actually between Wildflowers and their current spot down there on South Franklin, right?
In Hawaiians, yeah, exactly right. You should have seen the looks on people's faces when Matthew and I took these things up the freight elevator, clipped them in, and the two of us wheelbarrowed them from all the way down Fayette to Kitty Hoynes. People were like, cars were slowing down and asking us what we were doing. And then when we got there, a friend of mine, Kelly, who has her own landscape company, bought the trees and the things, and we're planting them live in front of Kitty Hoynes, and it really got the conversation going pretty quickly with the passerby. It's a game changer. People stop and go, I walk by here every day. What's going on with these things? And everyone's interested, and that's what helps us really kind of continue to work with the city to develop these ideas further, to be in a place where we can have an entire season. Syracuse, New York could literally have parklets in front of all types of businesses all over the city from April to October. We've just got to work a little bit on the finances, because paying $18 a day to rent the parking spot from the city times 2, 3, 4 parking spots can add up. But as a collaborative effort, the city sure did bend a lot to allow us to make these things happen for these local businesses. And it was always our goal from day one to make sure that it was fair to them, because the city of Syracuse loves to say we're innovative and we have an innovation team and we allow these kinds of ideas. But at the end of the day, no offense to them, but they are phenomenal at making it extra difficult to make these ideas a reality. And I think inch by inch, chipping away at it, the current administration has really become more and more lenient and more understanding that these ideas have to happen in order to help these local businesses. So instead of saying, yes, we can do it, and allowing them to do it, and then asking during a pandemic with mandates galore restaurant to dish out thousands of dollars to make this thing happen, just to give them a few more seats to benefit their business, I thought was unfair. So I decided we should crowdfund it. And although the money hasn't been flying in, the money has completely covered the cost of the permits, the rental of the parking spots, and the materials to build three going on 4 parklets for 4 different businesses. And with not a lot of funding, we can get a hell of a lot done if we're clever with the way we repurpose things. And that's why we're at a place finally where we're gelling with the city a little bit, in the sense of them being able to, in particular with DPW, who has a lot of interesting insights as to, and hurdles you must get by for safety. And they're understandable, but even DPW was ill prepared for the kind of like tactical version that we were doing. We were moving at a breakneck pace. And so to make these things, to get these things out here to help these restaurants, so they actually streamlined the process significantly. So it's noteworthy. And we can talk to, I'd love to be able to talk to the Lansing folks, because I'm the one who found the loophole. And that was, there's already sidewalk permit cafes that are required for any restaurant in the city. And you submit your sidewalk permit, you make a detailed drawing of exactly how it will look, you pay the fee, and you have a permit for the season. So we made parklets a simple addendum to the sidewalk cafe permits. So if you already had a sidewalk cafe, you could have a parklet in the same exact frontage of your restaurant or business, right? That's how we were able to make it not a whole nother separate permit that you have to go through all the same rigmarole, but rather you just sign the liability waiver, which is very similar waiver to what you signed for sidewalk cafe permits, with a small additional fee that gets tacked on. But then what you really are signing on for is taking care of these parking spots, and not just like taking advantage of them, but really you take them in as your own and give them a little bit more of a unique feel, make them almost like, change them to feel more like your restaurant and theme them out. And that's the idea. And that's where we've really been getting creative. And Matt will probably show you in a little bit here how we've gone from creating the pastas and kitty ones that look similar and have a feel so that there's almost a connection between the two, to creating the Funk and Waffles and the soon to be Three Lives video barcade Pac-Man versus Mario crazy one that it's gonna stop traffic. People are gonna slow down to look at this thing because it's got light, bright, and moving elements, right? And if these small businesses take them in a little bit and make them theirs and give them like a little bit of a customization, it really does help everyone. But really, that we weren't allowed to even consider this project until out of the blue, in my opinion. I've been going like this for months, talking every single day to the mayor's office. Finally, they just they broke and they said, yes, we can do the parklets. And I couldn't believe it. I lost my mind. I said, we're doing this, right? And within, parklets were first. And then shortly thereafter, I had worked with Eric on a pilot program for shutting down the 100 and 200 block of Walton Street in the middle of Armory. And we went from the city saying we can do it for 2 weekends back in August to being on autopilot, and we did it all of August, all of September, and it's going all the way through October as well. And it has developed and advanced along the way, but every weekend they shut down both blocks and allow outdoor dining in the street. And the city, as a municipality, had to apply to New York State, and SLA had to touch everything, and they allowed us to do it. So I think the city of Syracuse is learning that if we can come up with these better, more equitable plans for multiple businesses in the area, we can really, jump forward, and they get the taxes, so they win. They get the parking meter fees, so they win. They don't do any work for it, so they win. They don't have any overtime. DPW drops off the barricades, says see you later, and comes back on Monday and takes those barricades. They don't even take them back anymore. They just leave them there and put them on the side of the road. So we've taken all that away and given it to these businesses, and these businesses are really responsible for making this thing tick, and they're doing a pretty good job. Now, the folks who come down here and see these things, and before I get too far off topic, I just want to say real quick that it was parklets first, it was weekends on Walton second, because they won't close South Franklin or South Clinton because they become emergency lanes. And so, but parklets work the same way. They slow the traffic and they control the street a little bit. And so by inching out Armory Square, we've got a beautiful example of how we can apply that structure to Hanover and apply that structure to other neighborhoods throughout the city. So I'm begging them to consider a funky one on Westcott and a different one in Eastwood. And can you envision, like, cities proper do this, but why not inching outward? Syracuse's actual geographic draw is massive. What if we had them in Camillus? What if we had them all over the place? So when you came to this area, you saw these things everywhere and you're like, wow, this is awesome. Okay.
Yeah, you want to really make you really want to make a strength, which is the, especially during the warmer weather, and then also using some heat devices to extend those during those swing seasons, to help businesses thrive. And speaking of, an opportunity in Lansing to do some similar things. Going back to the Tampa St. Petersburg area, many years after I had moved up here, and I'd seen a huge macro renovation project down in one of their neighborhoods in downtown St. Petersburg, a very walkable city, if any of you are familiar. What they did was they actually had narrowed the road to almost be just strictly a delivery slash Uber slash drop off taxi lane with a couple pull-offs. And they extended the restaurants out, 3 or 4 more platforms to allow 2 more rows of 4 top tables for the restaurants on both sides, right? And so that inspired me to think about how the cities that were built in the 1800s, with St. Petersburg, didn't have some of the same constraints, but we do. The sidewalk space, the dimension between the front of the building and the street has been shortened and shortened through the years. And so how do we gain some of that space back, and how do we do it the right way? And so our professionals, we've got professional planners and landscape architects that have contributed to some of these thoughts and have talked with the city, and our structural engineers have helped us design for these platforms on slopes and ones that'll meet the city's guidelines. And what was really cool about the experience with the city, and you kind of brushed right past it, Michael, but for the purposes of not boring everyone here, is the numerous phone calls back and forth from both directions with the city and neighborhood and business development and DPW, and exchanging ideas of, art and really where to get this accomplished, and where Michael uses the word bend, and break and bend, the city was very open-minded. I want to commend them for that, very open-minded to listen and to have faith and trust their local design professionals, and folks that are really motivated to get this done for the people, like Michael. And for starters, we had to talk with them about the loading requirements, the dimensional requirements to be able to seat 2 full tables with limited COVID guidelines, right? The COVID guidelines had the 6-foot distancing, originally, and these things are still changing. But at the time, it was like, 1 parking space does not get it done. So the strict dimension of 20 feet, you really don't want to fit it all into 20 feet. The city wants to allow the barriers to be outside of that 20-foot envelope, even though it technically eats into the other spaces, north and southbound of it, if you will, by the width of the barrier. They realize that, and they say, you're right, we need to be able to have those 2 4-tops. We can't squeeze and pinch your barriers into the space you're paying for or renting, and then expect you to also maintain your distancing, right? So the city's been very pro business and pro support, very open-minded for this. And some sketches that you've been seeing and looking at the whole time that Michael's been describing the process is just some of what we've gone through, and it kind of is the picture format of these conversations that have been going back and forth, that I was just describing. And so that's been a really neat process to go from just repurposing the salvaged wood and then running out of it after getting done with Kitty Hoynes and possibilities, and saying, now we've got to come up with some original designs now. And we're on a sloped road like North Clinton for funk and waffles, right? So that's just adding a little bit to what's been going on. I'm going to jump to the next slide and show you sort of the graphics and the design process and pointing things out to the city, how we're going to have a level platform. The funding, unfortunately, didn't support 2 full spaces at Funk and Waffles at the time that we did the sketch, but the city was very malleable. We had given them the upfront money, and then they had reimbursed us. They reimbursed us for the space that we don't need at this point.
And I got to go on Amazon.com and buy fried egg and bacon strip string lights to put up, and on this particular parklet. And then also, because I'm good friends with the ownership, and I actually was a roommate in a former life 10 years ago when they invented Funk and Waffles with them, we have a bunch of vinyl records that had scratches on them or weren't exactly perfectly playable. So the wall of vinyl became the quick idea to make it catchy and a thing that would like fit the bill. Now here's the thing about the parklet stuff. We've been building and fighting and going back and forth, and DPW it sometimes puts unsurmountable hurdles in front of us, but they have been malleable with, and worked with us to finally get us to that place. So I'll tell you, we got kind of a weird opportunity recently, and Guy Fieri came and did a social distance version of Guy's Grocery Games at Funk and Waffles, pretty quietly snuck into town, shot it remotely, and snuck out a couple Tuesdays ago. So we're anxiously awaiting the episode to air, because we've gone from a 30 some odd people giving a couple $100 and one stranger giving $1,000 out of the blue, which is amazing, that funded these projects. And now we're about to be as seen on TV, because the Funklet, as you see in this concept drawing, was then thusly featured on the Food Network. So we're gonna see it on national television sometime soon. All I'm interested in doing is leveraging that and being like, slapping on all the signs out front of them. Oh, by the way, as seen on TV, and kind of getting that kind of like hype attention that helps put it out to more people, and maybe a few bucks comes in, because that money, they nickel and dime a little bit off of GoFundMe, you get it put into your fund, and that fund goes directly towards reimbursing these local businesses for the fees, the parking fees. And Matt and I literally go to like Lowe's or Home Depot and get the materials ourselves locally and build it out with a handful of partners. And so anyways, that's the idea. And I'm so enamored with the idea of the people of Syracuse actually throwing a few bucks down. So the Warp Zone, as you see, is the new one coming from 3 Lives. And we designed it out. Matt uses SketchUp to give it more of a 3D rendering that seeing is believing for people. So 3 Lives Barcade is doing a phenomenal job of engaging their customers. The customers are literally giving $5 here, or $10 there, or $20 here, and the money's flowing again. And they're getting rewarded with coupons for $5 off at a future date. And they're gonna have a costume contest on it for cosplayers and video game folks. So like, there's a lot of things that can happen with these once they're in place. And to be able to make Parklets happen in the city of Syracuse past just the one day has been the biggest win that we've had in such a strange year, to be able to benefit. And we're even trying to crunch numbers and figure out per square foot how much these things are worth, because places like Kitty Hoynes have 18 seats outside that almost double their output as a restaurant with the mandates put on them. So we're gonna do our best to try to keep making these things happen and keep the project open-ended in that way. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think one thing to clarify too, just for bookkeeping, I guess, would be that the material order and everything that everywhere the money's been going is correct with what Michael's been saying. SWBR, my firm, I've been grateful to my firm and my shareholders. I'm a part owner in the firm. That especially in times like this, where many of our projects are slowing and our backlog is becoming more challenging to keep stocked, that we're still finding this to be a very important thing to do, a very important endeavor. And we've gotten our internal promotional efforts supporting, when I talk about structural engineering and making sure these things are going to stand up to the guidelines, and helping the city, guide the city and our planners, and looking at the long-term solutions, which we'll get to in just one slide, and then we're close to wrapping up our bit. But I just wanted to be clear about that. What's ideal is that there's enough funding, or there's enough infrastructure in terms of the systems from the city and local government to support, whether it be a stipend or a more of a group endeavor, so that the professional firms, not just us and not just on our extra time, aside from quote unquote billables, can support cities and local municipalities, and really come up with the great solutions that can inspire the crowdfunding of the actual materials that come into play, right? And the building of it with manpower. There was OCC students that helped build for a day. The Funklet, that wouldn't have happened without the OCC students and Michael's connection there with
Lauren.
professor with Lauren. And so these are all great stuff. And so the long-term solution is to continue engaging the city here and any city that really wants to do this, and sort of gain back some of that roadway. Let's do some street narrowing. Let's look at evacuation routes and emergency routes like South Franklin here, in this sort of unicorn sparkle cloud. Let's look at how we can do more than just weekends on Walton and create something larger and narrow, a sort of seasonal narrowing of the road, natural slowing and calming of Walton to support seasonal or weekend closures that have just become permanent but don't require these orange construction barriers, but maybe they're those removable bollards that, and it looks much more welcoming and it's much more at home. You feel at home as a business and as a patron. We've talked with, and then even going east, I used to live at Merchant Commons when I moved up from Florida for a couple of years, and I walked across the alleyway to go to Metro Fitness, and so I know that Randy that owns Metro Fitness, and I was talking with him recently. Hey, would you, just broaching the subject? What do you think about getting some guys and girls out there with their barbells and dumbbells doing lunges in parallel with the traffic on Salina? Let's get some treadmills outdoors there. Let's really capitalize on the warmer weather and the nice season that we have in Syracuse and get more people outdoors, COVID or not. And let's get them outdoors. Let's have a plan in place to support this as far as street narrowing and road narrowing and parking space.
Spectacle all day. I'll take spectacle over anything. I'd rather be on the sign on the corner spinning a sign saying you can sit here in these parklets than, if you can garner that kind of attention, then it's much easier to turn to the city and say, look, this is actually what people want. It's actually working. It's actually changing the footprint of these underutilized spaces, or these spaces that we're so used to just going, trying to get one more car through the red light. As opposed to look what we could have here. If it were up to me, I would San Gennaro the entire goddamn city, and every single street would have lights and parklets and things happening. But without being too wild about it, if we can make this template that's understandable and has the guidelines, and DPW knows these are the requirements for load bearing, it's ADA friendly, so people can come. There is no curb. You go right off onto the parklet and back, and etc. So we've learned a lot about these things in the meantime. But Matt's right. It's all about understanding the flow of these areas and giving more opportunity and making it more welcoming for folks to actually utilize this. We don't need to have no parking here signs. We need to have use this area signs, and invite folks to really some people don't know what to do when they see these things. They stop and go, what's happening? But some people love it. We need to have a little more of a comprehensive approach. I know that it's 1:15. I'm watching the clock, so go ahead, John. I'd love to do some Q&A.
Yeah. That's what I was going to do. I was going to invite those that are.
Whoop, he froze. Looks like John might have froze up for a second with his internet there, but yeah,
let's invite questions.
There was a comment talking about from Glenn about the DAP-CNY starting to doing a parklet in 2017. And I think they also were interested in might have done one in 2018 or 19 as well. ESF students did one. They're on the opposite side of they did one on North Clinton right here on the corner in 2019.
Oh, John is totally dropped off.
Yeah, it looks like John dropped off, but
John is totally dropped off. So any input from anyone else attending at the moment?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter. I like what you just brought up.
Okay, just very briefly, the other day I was at Metro Fitness East, which is near the biggest intersection in the county, I believe, which is the stretch right along Wegmans on East Genesee and DeWitt. I was there when a storm hit. The lights went out in the building, but my workout was done. So I left the building. I got my car. I go to my destination was Wegmans across Erie East Boulevard, East Tennessee, and I thought I was about to give it up because there was huge streams of traffic and no lights. But then after a while, it was miraculous. People stopped and they just let me cross. And later on, I came out and there's some state troopers who were doing human traffic lights. But I didn't see any accidents. And so this gave me some encouragement for 81 that I think that people can adapt much more than we think to these situations. There's this whole school of tactical urbanism, which looks at, we have this very kind of almost concrete idea of what should be in cities, and that it should pass through all these hoops, and there should be qualified architects only, or what have you. Actually, maybe not even architects, but highway designers. And as research has told us that, the beginning of the 20th century, they parted company with ideas like public health. And so it's just pretty soon became just about highway design. And then they put them through cities. But more now because of COVID and so forth and so on. And actually many things in recent years, we're looking at how do we bring public health back into cities? And one of the ways is to connect with user knowledge, with who is actually on the street experiencing what the conditions are, what it's like to walk around your neighborhood. Do you find this is the case with what you're doing?
Yes. One thing that someone might confuse me with is someone who is homeless and lives downtown, because I spend so much time on the sidewalks and with these walking past these restaurants that I become a known quantity of the streets. And there are a lot of people in this area who are similar and hit these same streets every single day, and are always, downtown residents have risen over the last couple of years, and they walk their dogs in the same 6 blocks and they check things out consistently. So there are much more people noticing these changes than would normally be. And so when instances like that happen, and it's a miracle, you just literally depicted a genuine miracle of you being able to cross the street in like one of the highest foot traffic or traffic areas, period, right? So cars and vehicles and bicycles, like Glenn knows better than anybody that you have to be defensive on bicycles, even with the new infrastructure around here and the connective corridor bike lanes and such. Vehicles don't pay attention as much to the pedestrian or the bicyclist around here. It's just the way it is, and there's definitely muscle memory there. So I get DPW wanting us to have extra bright, reflective surfaces, because literally cars are looking around and doing it, right? But it is getting better inch by inch, not much thanks to, or in part thanks to people like Glenn who are working on these things, and people like our friends Paul Calabufo with the bike share program, Gotcha and all those things. But I'll tell you, if you sit and put a microphone to 20 people at the same intersection, you're going to get 20 different answers. In this modern day about what they think this street could look like, right? Is there even a thread that you could tie between those 20 answers? But it's interesting.
Oh yeah, to finish your thought, Michael, and I was going to jump in with
it is very interesting, Peter, because your comment here, tactical urbanism can benefit public health without a doubt. It's the community and the connection. And that's why the pandemic has seen every city in a similar way kind of like begin to change these like urban cores, and how people weren't allowed to go out much. So suddenly parks and the usage of parks was through the roof, and people realized they could go to these parks and they could carve their own path if they needed to stay away and social distance from folks, but they could, you saw like more and more usage, more throwback, more picnics, more hanging out, more, of that kind of behavior. And it's almost like romantic to see what happens, right? But we have to, in order to be able to sustain that and or make that like open, welcome, invitation happen, we need that kind of like, user feedback that can like help us, dictate these things. And tactical urbanism, like the graffiti of like greening, what I mean? Like being able to just completely, utterly change a mind of someone who walks or bikes that street every day of the week, is like the goal always. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and one note I got on my front door of our local business and our office at SWBR at Armory Square after the 2018 or 2019 parking day, where I showed up there, and on the note was signed by the locals was the parking is already horrendous, and this is so bad for business, and it doesn't help. My customers need a place to park, and so those are valid thoughts and opinions, and folks wanting to protect their business and how people access their business. But as become more walkable, and you tap into our parking garages and have an enjoyable walk from that garage to your business and natural flows to and from your business, like these outdoor parklets, that's gonna help. I think that's gonna raise all boats, float all boats, and really one of those common threads that might be as part of what Michael was saying. What could be a common thread, or what would be that direct partnership with professionals in the city and businesses to bring those open spaces to the businesses and to the people, to the folks that are on the upper 5 floors of a building with the bottom 2 floors or bottom 1 floor as a business, and they're all walking out the same doors and they're all using the same outdoor space. Naturally, it's organic. Maybe rather than having to go find a pocket park somewhere, or go, because that's not a problem Syracuse has. There's plenty of green space. Look at this aerial. There's green space on roofs. There's green space on the ground. There's plenty of space to go to. But the city and professionals' activity and engagement with the city and our professionals and Michael and these and everybody that's doing the parklets.
There's 130 parks in the city of Syracuse proper. Technically, it's like 127 parks, if I'm not mistaken. To put it in perspective, that includes everything from a small pocket park like Lemp all the way up to parks of the region. So you're right, there is green space, but the people of that area dictate how that space is used. So Lemp Park is not a park, it's a dog walking park. You know what I'm saying? Like they make it exactly what it is. So we have an opportunity to change the way that's used, or to invite folks to use it in a certain way also. And that's really what Parklets for the People is about. It's teaching some of the people that you can reutilize spaces and such.
So Michael, make sure you also drop the link to that video that your friend did, the aerial of the construction and the overhead area.
Sure will. It looks like drop that question too. I will, Matt.
And we'll let them. And we are looking for stats. We are going to look for stats. That's what I will say.
Yes. Yeah.
I see a question in the chat about any statistics about business development improvements, if any of that's available. I imagine it was hard during the pandemic to see much of it. And then, any comments on that?
Yeah, we're working on that right now, and we want to be able to report that back to the folks in the city and businesses. Obviously it's going to be a story of, well, we took a downturn by 60%. These are numbers I don't have stats on yet, but this is going to be kind of where we suspect things are going to go. It's going to be, well, we took a big hit, about half or more of our business, when we had to close temporarily or cut down our seats and go outdoor takeout only. But the parklets were able to, during the heat of the pandemic and the tightest restrictions, we were able to gain back 20% of that business. We were able to salvage a certain percent of our business to stay in business. That's really where the crux of it all. And next, the long-term approach is thriving, is doubling down and saying, now we're going to actually not just stay afloat. We're going to thrive next summer, COVID or not, with all these outdoor seating and yep.
And yeah, we actually reached out to Honora Spillane in the city, who deals with that kind of data. And we're literally trying to apply an actual formulaic structure, so we can say look, the parklets for on average for these businesses gain back X percentage, because we know how important the numbers can be when moving forward in pitching the city. So.
Yeah, great. Did I see Bob Haley raise his hand, or I'm not sure if that was a wave, Bob, or
Yeah,
did you have a question?
Sorry, unmuted, sorry. I've been sitting here, thank you, by the way, for the creativity that the two of you and your efforts and all the people you've worked with have put into this. It is about creativity. It is about the life juices that go into the street that people have choices to go to. What worries me, I'm, the other side of the coin here, is that you've been working so hard and pushing so hard uphill against city downhill inertia. And I have ongoing 20, 30 years of ongoing battles, more than that probably, in the sense of why aren't these qualities that you're advocating for and the businesses can benefit for part of a planning platform? In other words, you are one type of service that should be in a planning platform under SOCPA, which is city and county, at least under the city, and it should be balanced as opposed to a few people in the city supporting you and say, go out there and do what you can do. We're going to reduce the negative efforts to get it done. So, and I'll leave that one because we all know that situation. I'll go back to another side of the coin that you're struggling to give people more of the street back when in fact our city has a desperate situation of too much roadway. Your efforts, I tend to look at both sides of things on a range. And here's a case where you're trying to enliven little parcels of asphalt, when in fact the DOT and the city are about to accept a very wide highway on the ground plane underneath the elevated highway. Yes, it's the community grid, but the DOT is doing it as a quote highway quote business loop to make it bigger, wider, and so on. And I want the kind of quality you have in front of the new businesses in the park. So we need to advocate for reduced overall asphalt and quality of people place, which is to reduce the speed, reduce the number of cars, and we will be functional. There are creative ways to be functional. So I'm sorry, I enjoyed everything you said. I'm just looking at how can we rebalance what is an imbalanced situation.
Without a doubt, Bob.
Exactly right, Bob.
And I guess what it really comes down to is dually, I've been working away on art and culture, making it my weapon of choice for the past decade. And so
sure.
I basically quietly positioned myself. The mayor appointed me to the Public Arts Commission a few weeks ago. And later on this evening, we have a meeting. We're moving in a very good direction. I said, how come artists aren't a part of, how come the creatives aren't a part of the conversation of 81? I see a lot of political back and forth, but what I see is the single largest canvas for what we're talking about here, for like basically public art, quality of life, parklets meeting all these things and having this thriving thing. So if you bring it down to ground level and you throw trees up, yeah, that's cute, that's great, but there's so many more things that need to happen in order for it to even begin to be the building blocks of being this incredible corridor that actually makes people stop, slow down, pay attention, and benefits these businesses. And so I have been amassing footage with some friends and really pushing to document that whole corridor and trying to understand how we can have some fundraising and some things pointing towards the idea of when the community grid happens, that it's actually a community grid and it's full of communal spaces and such. And I think parklets is one of the weird, powerful tools that could be a thorn in the side of even the most scrutinizing governmental departments, because they're doable and reasonable and can like game change things. Yeah.
Yeah, I would only add to that, and I think that Baxter, you've been very helpful in your two previous presentations. They've been really terrific and stimulating. I think just to Michael, and I think we all know this, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You have to be careful of the DOT accepting art in a silo as applied art, an object here, an object there. Unfortunately, the DOT tends to just think of it as parts. And so I've heard of places that they're looking at to add something significant and then drive by it with a big highway. And urban design is an integrative art of social needs, and that's what urban design is. It's social, artistic, and functional. And so we just need to balance that. So thank you for your efforts. We all have to speak to balancing that in this city.
Yeah, that's probably a good, we'll give Bob the last word there, unless our panelists have some reply. We'll give you a chance, but we're about out of time. I want to say what I was saying earlier before my internet froze up, was that this presentation blew me away. The quality of what you shared with us and how you shared it, and this effect on the city of Syracuse, I think, is tremendous. Please keep us informed and let us know how we can help. I see you shared the link for the GoFundMe site with us, and we'll talk about how we can maybe share that with our social media. And yeah, I want to say thank you very much, and we look forward to having you back in the near future, and maybe doing a session outdoors.
Yeah.
Would Michael and Matt, if you want to say something else before we go, I'll give you a chance for the last word.
Yeah, one last thing. Baxter, I just wanted to say something. I attended your thesis digitally, and I was enamored with like the presentation, and I watched it. I wasn't able to be a part of the previous thing, but when I saw you pop up, I was like, oh yeah, I went to this thing, and it was like it was a digital Facebook invite, and I went to it, and I just wanted to let you know that part of the reason why I work so hard with Lupiani to make these things happen is because I thought for a period of time there weren't people like the Peter Kings and the Baxter Hankins of the world in Syracuse, but yet here you are. And I wanted to say thank you for sitting there and attending this meeting. And I kind of need to speak to you outside of it, because obviously you're going to have some interesting insights for us. But I wanted to also say to you, John, and everyone involved, that I would happily invite you to come to a post-Parklet meeting and continue talking about this. We do have permission from Jennifer Tiff in the city and the mayor's office to have a round table. And I think what we're going to do is have Greenings USA be a part of said round table. Moving forward, talking about Parklets, just this program alone for the next season. And on Thursday, I also am part of a small Zoom meeting with DPW and the mayor's office, talking about options for the immediate outdoor dining for the winter season, sustaining it with these businesses. So I'd love to, I threw my phone number into the group chat because I'll answer a call from anyone with your ideas or in regards to that, because I'm charged with putting the best ideas in front of the mayor's office. And I fear a lot of the ideas that downtown committee and other businesses have is to just spend money we don't have. So I'm trying to come from a different, version. But anyways, I really appreciate being surrounded by like-minded individuals like this. And thank you for taking the time to learn more about Parklets for the people. And thank you to SWBR for being so good to me, because I'm such a relentless, crazy person in the pursuit of better quality of life in downtown Syracuse.
Keep it up.
Give you a booyah for that, Michael.
2 thumbs up.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll see you next month, hopefully. If not, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.